afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT Reading Comprehension. My name is Rajat Sudana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar, we have Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert, and he's been helping students ace the GMAT for upwards of 3 years. In this webinar, we're going to look at how to go about getting to that 90th percentile score in GMAT RC. A lot of people think that acing reading comprehension is about doing a ton of reading. It's about being a voracious reader. In this webinar, using examples, we will prove that it's about doing what we call as active or deliberate reading. And we're going to demonstrate how do you go about doing that. We're going to demonstrate what are some of the best practices with regards to that. And we're going to prove to you how, if you do that, you just get so much more out of the passage that's given to you, and how, when you extract so much more information, answering questions becomes very simple. In reading comprehension, there aren't very many concepts that you need to learn. It's about the depth rather than the breadth. And one concept that you do need to learn is how to arrive at the main point, and to make sure that you understand the process of arriving at the main point. We did send these 2 video lessons your way on main point 1 and main point 2. If you've not gone through these 2 video lessons, which are on the left hand side, these video lessons are a part of your free trial. So post this webinar, go through these video lessons, and you're going to find that you have a much better understanding of GMAT RC. Then we have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free quant workshop, and this workshop is think of it as a proctored mock test, which gives you actually way more insights than a mock test. So in this workshop, we do 3 things. We determine what your current ability is. We determine actually what's causing your ability to be at the level that it is, which means we do tell you, not just that your quant score out of 60 is a Q46, Q47, or a Q40, but hey, these are your subsectional abilities, which means maybe you're not doing as well in number properties, maybe you're not doing as well in geometry, or so on and so forth. We also give you a tool that helps you understand the behaviors that may be causing you to really do poorly on quant. So and then we really help you create a study plan or an improvement plan, as we call it. So that's over here. Then we also have a critical reasoning webinar. That's 1 week from now on 22nd of February. In this webinar, we do way similar to what we do in the context of reading comprehension, which is we help you tackle the most challenging CR questions using a method called pre-thinking. Again, pre-thinking is an approach that was formally defined by e-GMAT, and you get to really see how and why that approach has helped more students on GMAT Club than any other approach. Okay, with that, we have about 100 students on this webinar. I see some of you have been raising hands. I want to understand, I want to get to know you guys more as a group. So I want to understand a few more things about you. One is, when do you plan to take the test? And the next is, what is your target GMAT score? Okay, let's get to this. What's your target GMAT score? Let's get some more data over here. Now, with regards to when do people plan to take their test, a good chunk of you are in the fewer than 15 days bucket. So about 20% of you, that's kind of the second biggest group. And the largest group is those who have more than 60 days before the test. And then in between, we have various groups, and each group is about 10% to 15% overall. With regards to the target GMAT score, I have just about 77 responses. I'd appreciate if I could get a few more over there. So over what I see is, 3 more or less evenly split groups. 25% if you're saying 720 to 710, 720, 730 to 750 is about 30%, and then upwards of 760 or higher are about 25% or so, and then we have about 20%, give or take, in the 600 to 700 bucket. That's great. Now with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. As we go into the webinar pane, the screen will change for you. So I'm going to give it another 10 to 15 seconds for the screen to get settled, and hopefully the screen should have settled for pretty much everyone regardless of whether you are in India or whether you are in the USA. And with that, let me actually bring in the webcam as well so you guys can see me. All right. So we talked about your target GMAT scores, and one thing that I'll tell you is, getting a high score on the GMAT is hard. You may start at 600. You once you get that 100-point improvement or that 80 to 90-point improvement, your brain will tell you to kind of say, hey, we've achieved enough of an improvement. Let's kind of move forward. And I want to kind of give you a few nuggets to really say, hey, why is it that you should aim for a score of 730 or higher, regardless of whether you're aiming for your MBA in the US or in India or in Europe. Okay, so essentially there are three reasons why you should aim for that 730 or higher score. Reason one is, hey, if you're aiming for a top business school, whether in Europe or in the US or Canada, they more or less require a score of 730 or higher. The second is scholarships. I mean, that's the second reason, probably the smallest reason, but one that provides instant gratification. That is, hey, MBA scholarships are at a record level, and more than, based on our estimates, e-GMAT has got about $28 million worth of scholarship every year. More than 50% of these scholarships go to students who score 730 or higher. And then the third reason is which I think is the biggest reason, but also takes the longest to realize, is if you look at the delta between the total earnings that a graduate of top school earns versus what a tier 2 school earns, that delta is the highest that it has ever been today. Excuse me. And over a 10-year period, that delta is close to $500,000. So essentially, those 30.700 versus 730 could, for many of you, mean more than $500,000 of ROI if you even include the cost of capital. So let's kind of look at why do we say that. So I'm going to kind of briefly go into each of these three reasons. These are some stats for median scores at top B schools, and in certain top B schools, you're going to observe two things. One is that Harvard and Stanford are not there. Why? Because even in the year 2014, Harvard and Stanford were closer to that 730 mark already. The second is it's a consistent upward trend with Kellogg, Yale, Columbia, MIT, and so on and so forth. In fact, if you look at the top 25 schools that are ranked in Perth and Quants, you're going to find that 23 out of top 25 schools are looking for higher median GMAT scores. And when you look at Columbia and MIT, more than 80% of the class, the median is 50 percentile, but if you look at a few schools, more than 80% of the admitted class has a GMAT score of 700 or higher, which means these schools are just telling you, hey, if you don't get a 700, don't even bother applying. Okay. And this is despite, and that's something which is really important, despite a decline in actually test taking population. In fact, the decline in the year 2020 is even higher. So when you compare 2018 with 2020, I think the decline was closer to 22-23% overall. Here's a quote by Mark Either, and he says, only the best of the best have a shot of getting into any of the top 25 schools. And this is a trend that doesn't just stop at top 25. Actually, it goes beyond that. When you look at the larger score, median score increases over a 5-year range, what you're going to find is out of the top 25, only 2 schools are there with the highest GMAT scoring increases. So those are Kellogg as well as Michigan, but most of the other ones are not among the top 25. Yet you see that GMAT increase. Okay. And again, this is what we call as statistical data. I'm going to really show some anecdotal data. As we say, our students get so many admits, so many scholarships. Example of a guy, Nishant, who was rejected by Tuck, Penn State, and a bunch of other schools at 690, and with 740 he got an admit from Columbia. He got full fellowship from multiple schools. And when he reached out to Tuck, when he had a 690, and he said, why is it that you rejected me? The reason that was given was that, hey, your GMAT score isn't up to par. We like your application. Everything else is great. Your GMAT score is what's stopping you. Pravi, another very interesting case. She scored 680. She applied to 5 business schools, did not get a single interview invite. within 7 hours of reporting a 740 score. So after applying, she improved her score to 740. She got 5 interview invites, 7 hours, 5 interview invites, 1 month, 0 interview invite. I mean, this can't be a coincidence. Again, she got multiple scholarships, as you can really see over here. Krishnakant, another very interesting story. 680 rejected from everywhere. 720 got 3 full fellowships despite applying with a 720 in round 3. Okay. So again, you can see this over here. And again, the GMAT score is way more important than it has ever been. Why? Because hey, not just admission, but scholarships also depend on it. In fact, your scholarships depend on 2 things. One's your GMAT score. The second is how well you do during the interview. So overall, it's very well. I mean, if you do the research, you're going to find that B schools in the US offer about $350 million worth of merit scholarships. In Europe, that number is about 50 to 60 million. So Europe's not as much, but still a substantial amount. And if you look at the stats, and then when we look at stats of e-GMATers, about 11,000 students who are paying students every year, what we find is about 55% of that scholarship money goes to people who score 740 or higher. And 80% of it goes to those who score 710 or higher. What it really means is if you get a score of 740 or higher, you probably are looking at a $40,000 scholarship if you choose the school strategically. And as I said, these 2 factors have an impact on the scholarship amount. Personally, I received 2 full fellowships. I didn't pay a single penny for my MBA, and the reason is because one of the reasons is my GMAT score. Have a few other anecdotal examples. Mansi received admits from Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, and INSEAD. She's currently studying at Harvard. She got a $90,000 scholarship. Again, you can see her GMAT score. Victor Makula scored a 770, got full fellowship from Ross and Keenan Flagler. So that's about $143,000 worth of scholarship over there. Kong Bui, 760 scorer, got 4 full fellowships. In fact, his history is so interesting that he just didn't get full fellowship. He also got money to study. So he was paid $1,700 a month to study at Ohio Fisher. And again, it's an incredible story. And a few others that you already saw. Nishant, also got a full fellowship from Ohio, about $125,000 worth. Pravi, $80,000, and Krishnakant also got multiple full fellowships, each in the $120K range. So if you look at all the fellowships that he received, probably about $600,000 worth of it, where he's studying $124,000 worth of fellowships. And so another very interesting anecdotal data point is an example of a guy who applied to various schools with a score of 710, was waitlisted by those schools, did not apply again, just improved his GMAT score. He actually reached out to those schools and said, hey, I did so well in the interview. My application was good. Why did you waitlist me? They said, go improve your GMAT score. He improved his GMAT score, just sent the GMAT score again, didn't even apply again. The same schools that waitlisted him now not only offered him admits, but also offered him scholarships. So, I mean, from waitlist to scholarships is an incredible story. And if you want to see more such stories, we've close to 100 such stories on our YouTube channel that you can access. So, and here is a quote from John Fuller, who's a former admissions director at RC. He says, someone with a 770 is much more likely to get a financial reward. Why? Because the B school would likely be buying that high GMAT score. The third reason, so admission, statistical data out there, scholarships. I think if you do the research, you can probably get some data, not as much as we provide, but you can definitely get some data. But this is the third reason, probably the most important, the most ignored reason, is when you look at the delta in total earnings. And the reason is because to really get that delta, you have to look at stats and you have to infer information, which we'll talk about in RC, by the way. But you also have to look back 10 years. So, so when you compare, and this, I'm going to just take an example just to illustrate my point. I'm going to compare two schools. One's Babson, the other one's MIT. And you guys may be thinking, why am I comparing these two schools? Why? Because these two schools are both based out of Boston. They're 20 miles away. And so someone who's graduating from Babson essentially has access to the same set of opportunities that someone who's graduating from MIT does. And so you look at their starting salaries today, the median base salary from MIT versus Babson, there's a delta of close to $40,000. But when you add the sign-on bonus, the delta increases to about $60,000 overall. Now, even if we take the delta to be $45,000, because the sign-on bonus is not every year, you do it over a 10-year basis, and you say that delta remains constant, it leads to about $450,000. Now, this is the number today, but the interesting thing is 12 years ago when I studied at Babson, and the delta wasn't there. I mean, MIT graduates would get about $110,000 as starting salary. Babson grads would get $95,000 as starting salary. Okay, Babson, that number hasn't changed a whole lot. MIT, you can see the number having increased as well as the sign-in bonus having an increase as well. So again, three reasons. You can see each of these three reasons. Now, and the reason I'm saying this is because as you get into education, as you start studying for the GMAT, half of you have more than 2 months to study for the GMAT. You will get to a time where your brain will tell you to stop. I want to make sure that you have this data for that particular time. Okay, so if you're aiming for that, I'm going to actually pause this over here and see. Hopefully, a couple of you have been complaining about audio. So if you're aiming for that 730 score, what should be your RC ability? Let's just get in a short answer poll over here. If you're aiming for that 730 or higher score, what do you think your RC ability should be? You can type in your answers. Okay, I have 12 answers. Okay. Some of you are saying you're new to the GMAT, others are actually giving some very specific answers. That is really very interesting. Some of you are actually giving super precise answers. That's very cool. Okay, I'm going to broadcast results. So you can really see a lot of you are saying in the percentiles. Ability is measured in percentile. It's not a score out of 800. It's not a score out of 60. It's percentile, and so it should be around the 90th percentile if you want to get to a score of 730 or higher. The lowest I think it can be is about the 80th percentile or so, and 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 you don't need to get 100% accuracy to get 90 percentile ability. Someone really said 100% accuracy. Accuracy is a very imprecise number on the GMAT, but yes, it should be around that 90th percentile. So, so how do you get to that 90th percentile ability in RC? And to do that, let's kind of understand how you approach GMAT reading comprehension today. I'm going to just reduce the size of the presentation so that we have a bit more real estate for our short answer poll. So how do you approach GMAT reading comprehension today? If you could write that answer in the short answer pod over here. Let me remove broadcast results. How do you approach Cool. I have about 31 answers. I'm going to broadcast result. I see some really good habits over here. That's very good to know. You read, summarize each paragraph, and then respond to each question. I summarize the paragraphs. Um, you have a you summarize the RC, read critically, read slowly, some really really good ones, and then I have some answers where you talk about skimming the passage and so on and so forth. Okay. So the next question is something which quantifies this answer in many ways. So the next question is, what level of understanding of passage do you have today before you start, approaching questions? And I'm gonna show up poll question, and I want to explain the answer choices over here. So complete understanding 100% is there. Between 75 and 90% is something where you understand the transitions in the passage, you understand what the author is talking about. Maybe you skim through the detail. Between 50 and 75% is where you say, I understand what the passage is about, what the subject that the author is talking about, but I don't have a complete understanding of the transitions. And maybe when I look at the question, I'm going to come back and get a complete understanding of the transitions. And less than 50% is those who actually are resort to approaches such as, I'm going to read the first and last line of the passage. I'm going to basically look at the questions, go back and look for that substance in the passage and go about doing that. Okay, I have about 85 answers. Let's get to 100 answers over here, guys. I have 160 plus students here in the webinar. So all right, 3, 2, and 1. 99 answers so far, 100 answers. Let me end the poll. Let me broadcast the results. So what you see is a good chunk of you are in that 75 to 90%, a few in the 100%, then good chunk of you in the 50 to 75, and then in the less than 75. Okay, so so that's good. So I think we know where the class is. A bulk of you, but close to 90% of you are in that 50 to 75 or 75 to 90. My goal really would be that if you are in that 75 to 90, how do I nudge you guys more towards that 90? And if you are in that 50 to 75, how do I inculcate some habits which you continue to practice upon, and so that you can get into that 75 to 90 bucket? Because once that happens, acing GMAT RC becomes fairly easy. So our approach in this session is going to be, three-pronged in some ways. We're going to talk about reading strategies which will help you get the most out of the passage. We're going to briefly talk about them, but we're going to spend a ton of time demonstrating these reading strategies. And we'll first demonstrate them through some small passages, and I say small passages, say one paragraph or two sentence passages. Why? Because that's kind of the first step. We want to go baby steps. Now, as we get to those two paragraph passages, they will be dense. So you'd be able to really see the value of reading strategies. We'll use the information that you extract from those two sentences. And once you do that, you're going to really see how much more information you can extract, even from a simple two-sentence passage. We're going to demonstrate how that information helps you answer A main point question, and B, an inference question. And then we're going to apply this method to an official passage. Okay. Again, the method's not going to change. It's just that you're going to apply this to a longer passage. Now, everything that we do in this session is going to be difficult. Why? Because the same strategies, if you can apply them to difficult, by induction, uh, you can apply them to easy as well. Okay, so that's what our approach is going to be. Now, before I go there, I want to talk about this one thing over there, attitude. Why is attitude important? Why is attitude important? Okay. Some really great answers over here. It sets the positive tone. It gives you more energy. Your brain understands things better. So before I go and talk about any strategy over here, I want to make sure you approach GMAT RC with the right attitude. And what is the attitude? It's an attitude of love. In very simple words. I mean, whatever the test throws at you, you've got to tell your brain, I am really interested in it. It's something that's valuable to me. It's something that provides me insights that I usually don't have. And it is a very logical piece of text. And that logical piece of text adds to you who you are as an individual. If you do not have that attitude, if you believe, and I think as some of you actually do, they'll say, hey, GMAT RC is useless, or reading comprehension is useless. It's about a topic that you'd not be bothered about in your lifetime. It's something that you're not concerned with. It has very little to do with business. Then what you're going to find is I can give you the best strategies in the world, but essentially those strategies won't work. Why? Because you need your brain to be focused for those strategies to work. But before I go to the strategies, what I just said, isn't that true that some of you have that attitude to really say, hey, if a passage is about humanities, you say this is of no concern to me. Why? Because I am not concerned with humanities, or you know women emancipation, or how industrialization in the past led to poor sanitation conditions for workers, and so on and so forth. Do you does that happen? Does your do you tell yourself that when you're reading an RC? Again, be honest, guys. We are here as a group. We are here in what I call as a low risk environment, and sometimes, yes, it happens. And the first thing that I want you to correct, even before we get into the strategies, is is uh, is that attitude. One of the nice things that a lot of people tell me when they come to our sessions is they say, "Hey, uh, the problems that I face when I come in and you see the poll answers, I see others face the problems as well, and that tells me that I am not unique. So I'm not a crazy person with whom this thing happens. It's a human tendency, as some of you have said. Okay, and it's good to know that this happens. It's also good to know that this is a problem that you need to address. Okay. So the first thing you have to tell yourself is that you've got to get immersed in the passage. And as I said, this is something that's interesting to me. This is something that I'm going to master. The information that I need to master this is there in the passage. Okay. These are three things that you need to do. Now, the next piece, which is I'm going to talk about just three strategies, nothing complex, because as I said, GMAT RC is not about concepts, it's about diligent application. The three reading strategies, and the only the three reading strategies that you need to know are: A, understand the sentence structure, which is how do you read a complex sentence and infer meaning out of it. If you're an e-GMAT student, if you've gone through the master comprehension course, you know how to understand sentence structure, you know how to extract information out of it. We are going to take the same basics from the master comprehension course and put them over here. Okay. The second piece that we want to really do is what we call as active reading. And when you read actively, what you're doing is you're focusing on the keywords and you're extracting information and you're predicting what the author is going to say. Now, why is it important to predict? Uh, uh, it's important to predict because once you are predicting in some form, what you're going to find is your mind has a much higher tendency to uh, accept new information, and GMAT RC will throw a lot of new information at you. And the third piece is, you get so much new information, you can't just keep on reading. You've got to summarize. Once you feel that your brain's overloaded, and each one of you is different, each one of you is at a different level of comprehension. So once you feel that you're being overloaded, summarize that piece and predict, and then only move forward. And again, don't stop predicting. Now, this third piece over here is very interesting with regards to different individuals may have different needs. And even those needs may differ from passage type to passage type. How many of you over here brand yourself as technologists? So let me just put in a yes no poll over here. How many of you brand yourself as technologists? Okay, and again, technologist means I'm comfortable reading content related to technology. I'm someone who's actively reading about new technology trends and so on and so forth. So if you are someone who's confident, who is a technologist over here, what you're going to find is if you get a passage which is pertaining to technology, more often than not, you'll be able to read more sentences before you feel the need to summarize. Um, at the same time, for the same individual, if you get a passage on geography or humanities, you're going to find that you actually need to pause and summarize more often. So even for the same individual, there's no one size fits all. You've got to adapt, and your brain will tell you when it's being overwhelmed, and you've got to recognize that. Okay. So where does understanding of sentence structure happen? It happens at the sentence level. Where does predicting the thoughts through keywords happen? It happens within a paragraph. And summarization happens within a paragraph as well as among. Again, it depends on how comfortable you are with a certain topic. But your brain will tell you. And all I want to make sure that you do is you don't ignore what the brain's telling you. Okay. One other piece, which again comes along with this, is read slowly. If you want to do RC fast, and this is something if you want to just write down and take away with you, if you want to do reading comprehension quickly, learn how to read slowly. That's it. Read slowly and do this. So that was all the theory that we wanted to do. It's about 30 minutes into the session. We still have an hour to an hour and 20 minutes in the session. Let's now start having fun. So how do we go about having fun? We actually solve questions. So I don't want to time you guys. So what I want to do is I want you to tell me this one term called still solving, and and that way once you and I want 60 to 70 people to click on still solving. So that way when you choose another answer choice, I know as a group you guys excuse me have moved on and you guys have arrived at the answer. That way I won't time you. As a group you guys would time yourself. Okay, let's look at still solving. I want to get 60 people to say still solving over here. 70 people are saying still solving. That's good. I'm going to remove broadcast results and I'm going to give you guys a minute to read this passage and enter your summary notes. And these notes are just for you. So I'm going to give you guys about a minute. All right, here are the options again. Read slowly, check the correct answer. All right, pretty much everyone's done, guys. So get those responses in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. Excuse me. What you see here is about 45% of you chose choice D, which is the correct answer. About 55% of you chose another option, or I'd say 50% of you chose another option, because 6.7% were still solving the question. So let's kind of go through this and see why choice D is the correct answer. So we're going to go to the passage. We're going to read slowly. Excuse me. Bordering on the extreme. Okay. When you read this, I'm going to hide this. When you read this, what do you infer out of this? Bordering on the extreme. And how many of you kind of focused on this? Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism it considers it a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. Okay, so when you look at this and you really say, hey, bordering on an extreme, you say, hey, this is an author's point of view, and what the author is saying is this is an exaggerated definition. Okay, so this is it's a definition, and it's a definition of EC. So when you see a big word, you really always abbreviate it. So let's say the definition of EC, and the author considers that definition to be an extreme definition or an exaggerated definition. So let's kind of see what that definition is. So one definition of EC considers it a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. Okay, so there's a differentiation between something called in-group and out-group. And again, you may not understand this completely, but it's important to understand that that differentiation is like between these two terms, in-group and out-group. And what's that? In which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group, so a bunch of things that seem like good things to the in-group, they are correlated with the state of hostility towards out-group. So all of these nice things with the in-group, they are correlated with hostility towards the out-groups, which, and what does this which refer to? What does this term which refer to? Outgroups, yes, the outgroups are often perceived as subhuman and or the incorporation of evil. So when you're reading this, what you're saying is EC is some differentiation as per which love of your people is linked with hatred towards outside people. So just to be super precise over here, this 2-line passage, or rather actually 1-line passage, talks about 3 things. It presents one definition of EC. It indicates that that definition is a bit exaggerated, and as per this definition, the following things are correlated. One is love for your own people and hatred for outside. So these are the 3 things that you should have extracted from this. Now we still haven't gone to the answer choices, or question, but just from reading this, you should have extracted these 3 things. How many of you were able to extract this? So select the items that you were not able to extract. The question says, tell me what is it that I wasn't able to extract. And this feedback's really important. Why? Because if you're not, and you can select more than one item, by the way. So it's a multiple answer question type. So it's really important to know what is it that you were not able to extract, because when you make a mistake, it's because of this. If you address the cause, the effect goes away. If you extract everything out, you won't make a mistake while answering questions. Okay, let's get a few more answers. Half of you made a mistake, which means that you guys made a mistake probably on one of these 3 things. So I want to figure out where you faltered. And it's also good to know where, you'll see as a group where people falter. So 3, 2, and 1. I got 70 responses. So out of the 70 odd, half the people could not figure out the fact that this definition is exaggerated. Um, but 23% of you could not figure out that this is one definition of EC. It's not the definition that the author agrees with, and but 25% of you were really not able to get this thing out. So let's look at the one question that we have on this one. So the question is, what's the main purpose behind writing this paragraph? And as I already mentioned, the correct answer is choice D. We're going to really look at why is it that the other answer choices are incorrect. Okay, choice A says to criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people not belonging to the same group. So when you think about what happens in the passage, the author presents a definition of EC, and then he presents his view that this is bordering on the extreme. Okay, and when you think about it and you say, does the author really say that? Is there anywhere in the passage that the author mentions that EC encourages hostility? Does the author mention that anywhere in the passage? No, it doesn't. He says this is what is there in EC. Okay. All right. And the author also doesn't criticize any concept over here. Okay. So when you look at choice A, you say this is wrong, and hence choice A cannot be correct. And but 10% of you chose choice A over here. Now let's look at choices B and C because they were a lot more popular. Choice B says to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. Okay. Now, what does the word evaluate mean? What does the word evaluate mean? Okay. Evaluate is actually weighing pros and cons. And again, if you guys have questions, please don't put those questions in the short answer pod. Put those questions in the Q&A pod, which is below the presentation. Okay. Okay. So evaluate means presenting the positives and negatives. Does the author present positives and negatives? No, he doesn't. Okay. And then the author presents a few features, but it's not just a definition. It's not a ton of features. Okay. So Kriti says the author says extreme. Does it not mean he's criticizing? No, Kriti, it doesn't mean that he's criticizing. What he's saying is it's an extreme definition. It's one end of the definitions that are there. He's not saying that definition is bad, that definition is good. All he's saying is that it's an extreme. Okay. When you think about it, and again, let's kind of flip it in other terms. Let's say there's a company who's predicting revenue. Has one extreme and there's another extreme of revenue, which is to really say, hey, if we get the best quarter, we're probably going to be upwards of 50%. That's an extreme. If hell breaks loose and macro factors go down, we're going to be down by 30%. That's another extreme. It's an extreme. How do you know? That's a great question. Gaurav says, how do you know if it's criticizing or not? How do we know when an author criticizes something? And I'm going to really show the passage once again. How do we know whether the author criticizes something? What is criticizing something? He presents a point of view, right? He talks about its negatives. Absolutely. When you criticize something, you rarely say, you present an opinion about it, right? Does the author really say this definition is incorrect? No. Or he says, I don't like this definition, A, B, and C. He says bordering on the extreme. One definition. Look at the word over here, one definition. And which is where, and these are really good questions, by the way. And this is where, when you think about extracting information out of the passage and doing it what we call as absolutely objectively, this is what it means. The author is not presenting his view, Ankit. Ankit is saying, how is the author presenting his view? No, he's presenting information. He's not presenting his view. Okay. So he says one definition. Okay. So for me, when I reject choice B, I rarely say I'm going to go back to choice B. The evaluation part is completely wrong. And I'm going to, because of this, I'm going to reject choice B. Now, some of you are saying, what are the things that are listed over here? Aren't those the various features? Okay. Let me just get the passage. And this is kind of where reading the passage actively is super important. Let me actually just you guys are asking good questions. I'm going to get the passage over here, that way I don't have to go back and forth. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. So the question was, are these things not features of, and let me just make it of ethnocentrism? That's a question. Now, let me ask this question to you. Where do these things come from? And where is my poll? Here's my short answer poll. The schismatic, all of that piece, love for this and blah, 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 they come from that one definition of EC, right? They come from that one definition of EC. Does it mean they are features of EC according to the author? Does it mean that, no, they're not features of EC? That's a list in one definition. Okay. Again, it just may seem like a sentence, that there's a meaning to it. And that's the beauty of an RC sentence. Yes, as let's see who said that. As Kevin said, it's just what the definition says. It's not necessarily what the author thinks. Absolutely. And that's a very important distinction in GMAT reading comprehension. Who's saying that? Is there a significant difference between evaluating and criticizing? Absolutely. And again, as you go through the e-GMAT course, they'll tell you what that difference is. Evaluating means I'm looking at the pros, I'm looking at the cons to arrive at a decision. Criticizing means I know that it's bad, I'm criticizing it. Okay, let's look at choice C. To define the concept of EC, which leads to hierarchy among social groups. Okay, and when you think about this, you really say, hey, and a good chunk of you chose choice C. What does the author do? He actually presents a definition. It shouldn't be it should be a definition, which he considers to be bordering on an extreme, and he doesn't define it himself. It's a definition. It's someone's definition. And the second thing is, there's absolutely no mention of hierarchy. So when you look at this, you say, man, this is wrong, which makes choice C to be incorrect. Okay. And choice D, which is the correct answer, to introduce the concept of EC by presenting a view on it. And he said, does the author present a view on it? Yes, he says it's bordering on an extreme. And then does he introduce the concept? Yes, he does. He says, that's what the definition is. And that's what that definition is. Okay, so that part is correct, which is the correct answer. Okay. So again, these answer choices might seem to be close, but when you evaluate each one of these answer choices with the information given in the passage, what you're going to find is that the correct answer choice is absolutely correct. The incorrect answer choice is absolutely incorrect. There are no two ways about it. So a couple of more questions. How about if the other choice said critically evaluate? Even then, evaluate means doing pros and cons. The author doesn't talk about pros and cons of EC. Okay, so Abhishek says, isn't the word concept too broad? No, when you see introducing a concept, then it's not too broad. Remember the word introduce over here. Okay, so now let's go to the second passage. The second passage, you're going to do the same thing. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to read the passage. It's a two-line passage, and you're going to actually, after this, tell me. I'm going to present a question. It's going to be an inference question, and let me bring in my poll over here, and you will tell me which one of the options can be inferred. Okay, here is the passage. It carries on, so I'm going to give you about a minute to read this. All right, so here are the various options, and here is the poll. All right, guys, let's get those answers in. I'm going to give you another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. We got about 100 answers, and you can really see the split. uh, choice E and choices E and B really popular choices. Um, and other than that, other of choices. I mean, choice A was quite popular as well. So that is great. So I want you to tell me one thing. I'm going to put another poll question over here. I'm going to reopen that, and that poll question only has 2 answer choices. So the poll only has 2 answer choices, but the question has 3 answer choices. So please ignore 4 answer choices, but so ignore choices C and D. So I'm going to give you a simple statement. If the author says the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people, what can you infer from the statement above? Okay, can you infer that some people regard color blue as soothing or the color blue is soothing? Okay, it's either choice A or B. So don't choose any other choice. If you get a statement which says the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect, what can you infer from that statement? It's either A, this is A, and this is B over here. Okay, all right. 3, 2, and 1. And this is where I think when I share the results, this is where data is super powerful. Um, we again got close to 100 responses. And what we see is about 30% of you think that the color blue is soothing. That is correct. And 66% or 70% think that choice A is correct. Choice A is actually correct, which is some people regard the color blue as soothing. So what the author is saying is the color blue is considered to have. What it means is that some people consider it doesn't mean that the author considers it to have. Okay. So which is why you can't really say the color blue is soothing. You can't infer that. What you can infer is that there's a certain group of people that considers the color blue to be soothing. Now, why did we have this question after that complex paragraph? Because essentially, that paragraph is just about this concept, and you're going to really see that very clearly. But do you guys see the difference between the two answer choices? Both of them are talking about the color blue being soothing. One is the opinion of the author, the other is the opinion of a group of people other than the author. Okay, and this is a very important distinction. Okay, so let's kind of look at this paragraph and then see which one is the correct answer. EC and its canonical EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia, and let's call it XB. Okay, so when you look at this and you really say, hey, let me just pause over here. What does this mean that they're deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia? And because over here, the moment you see a comma and something else, this means there's a modifier that's modifying something that is either the prior sentence or the word prior to that. Okay, so we know that this part is talking about EC and its variants, and the author is saying that they're considered to be closely connected to XP. Okay, and if you're doing predictive reading, what you're really saying is, okay, what would the next part be? It would be something that either explains what XB is, or it will be something that explains the outcome of it if it's a verb ing form. And so the moment you start reading this, it's a complex attitude, system cum sentiment structure, uh, involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange. Vis-a-vis means towards the strange or the alien. Again, really dense language, but essentially what you have to really say is this thing is explaining what XB is. And let me actually put in the short forms over here. We're going to call this XB. Okay, so this explains what XB is, and this is what we call as EC. Okay, this is what is EC. And this thing explains what XB is and everything that the stranger or an alien represents. So essentially, what you're really saying is it's an attitude, it's a complex attitude, which involves dislike for the stranger. Okay. Then the author really says, and this is a really important part over here. You've got to pause. Some sociocultural anthropologists. What's the implication of some sociocultural anthropologists over here? Okay, it means not all. What else? It may not, yeah, some is this, but what it's really saying is when the author says some of these people consider, it doesn't mean that the author is considering. It's not necessarily the author's view. Okay. And that's something which is really important because when you see the author using this, somebody does this, or it is considered, it means that the author is saying, I may not believe in it, but some people consider. Okay. Some sociocultural anthropologists even considered XB and EC opposite sides of the same coin, but a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. So some anthropologists consider XB and EC to be very, very similar, opposite sides of the same coin, but then a few voices, so some other people rarely say that that need not be the case. Okay, so again, XP is hatred for aliens. Some experts take that on an extreme, which is that XP and EC coexist. Others disagree that they coexist. Okay. And when you think about it, what you're really saying is, man, there's a very little author view, as Pallav says over here in this. This author's view is not given. The author is saying they're deemed to be X, and it explains what xenophobia is. And then he says some people consider this, and others say that's not correct. Okay. So if you think about what the author does in this, the author defines a new term XP, and then he says some consider that XP and EC are closely connected. Some experts think that they coexist, and some other experts think that doing that is not necessarily true. That need not be the case. Okay, that's kind of what you should have extracted from this passage when you read this. Okay, so which part of this, when you look at each of these four, were you not able to extract from this? So this 1, 2, 3, and 4, this is what you should have extracted. Was which part were you not able to extract? And this is again a multiple response question, so you can select more than one part. All right, let's get a few more data points over here. My question is, which part were you not able to understand? Let's get that. 3, 2, and 1. We only got 43 people who weren't able, who responded to this one over here. Let me end the poll. And again, you can really see 2 and 3 were things that a lot of people weren't able to get, and a few of you weren't able to get 1 and 4 as well. Okay, so let's go to the answer choices now. Okay, but again, before we do, a correct inference is always what the author thinks from the point of view of the author, which means that a correct inference cannot be something on which the author hasn't given his opinion. All right, but if there are facts in the passage, the author will agree with them. Why? Because on the GMAT we don't dispute facts. Okay, here's the passage over here. When you look at the answer choices and you really say why is it that they are incorrect, let's kind of go about doing them. So xenophobia and EC are different facets of the same concept. Can you infer this? Does the author really believe in this? The answer to that is no. This is only the view of some experts. The author neither agrees nor disagrees with this. Hence, this option is incorrect. And about 16% of you chose choice A, and you can really see choice B is popular, so is choice E. Okay. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. Again, is this the author's view? No, it's a considered view. It's a deemed view. Okay, and this view doesn't really indicate what the author actually believes. Author may believe in this, may not believe in this as well. Question 3. XP and EC are not connected with each other. Again, this is the view of some experts, not the view of the author, the same reasoning. Choice D, in some cases, xenophobia could cause EC. We don't have any cause and effect relationship stated, so this is completely out of scope. And then xenophobia entails dislike towards the strange. When you look at this part over here, a complex attitude, come sentiment structure, blah, 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 blah. This is what the author is saying. He's not saying this is a view of someone, and which is what he says is the definition of XP. This is something that's given by the author. Then this is something that you can definitely infer from this. So which is why choice E is the correct answer over here. Okay. So again, a lot of you understood many parts of this paragraph. Why is it that you were unable to get to the correct answer? Deemed to be, you didn't understand. Okay. Fell into the traps. What are the traps here? Thought that a view is true. Okay, that's good. Did not identify what the author said. All right, so this passage also has some complex words, right? Now, do those words and have a whole lot to do with the correct answer? So that is good, and you can really see this over here. So one thing which someone asked, and this is a really good question again, was that what do you do when you have complex words in a GMAT reading comprehension? Okay, so what do you do when you have complex words? So first of all, there'll be very few sophisticated words that will go into that you'll see in a GMAT reading comprehension, and sophisticated words that matter. Okay, and we actually have a couple of concepts on this in the course. That's one piece. The second piece is whenever you would have those words, what you have to really always trust the test maker is that those words would be directly or indirectly defined. So for example, when you think about the word xenophobia, it is defined directly. Okay, are deemed to be intimately connected. Even if you didn't know what deemed to be meant, you could probably guess that this is something that's considered to be or taken as or something else. It's not the author's variance. Why? It's not the author's opinion. Why? Because the author would not say deemed to be, or you won't use a word uh, deemed to be if it were his or own opinion. The important point that I want to emphasize over here is, when you think about what we said earlier as to what is important to GMAT RC, um, what's important is you understanding sentence structures. Okay, and that's something which is really important. And just to emphasize my point, let me put in a notepad over here. And let me just make the font bigger so you guys don't have to pull your eyes out. Extremely large. So let's call this 1 and 2. Okay. So in 1, what's the difference between 1 and 2 over here? If this is 1, okay. Okay, one is fact, one is author's view. Extremely large companies are too big to grow is author's view. Okay, and you can also consider it to be a universal fact. And two is some people's view. Okay, two is a view of some people. One is author's view. You can't really call it a fact if you don't know what's around this. Okay, and let me explain this part over here. So if you see this statement, extremely large companies are too big to grow because they already dominate most of their target markets, then what happens to this statement? What happens to the portion in blue? It's a judgment. It becomes a claim. It's no longer a fact. Okay, it's still an author's view, but it's a judgment. Okay, it then this becomes a claim or a judgment or a conclusion. They're all the same thing. But is it true? The author thinks it's true. The author thinks it's true. Okay, so that's author's view. Is there a cause and effect? Yes. Whenever you have the word because, you have a cause and effect. Absolutely. And there has to be an S over here. Okay. But it is a claim. A claim is always doubtful, whether the author makes it or whether you make it or anyone makes it. You can always question a claim. The thing that I'm trying to explain is when it comes to GMAT RC, you guys worry about reading fast. You get worried about essentially not grammar, vocabulary. But what you need to be concerned about is sentence structure. What you need to be concerned about is reading and comprehending. Is author's judgment different from author's view? No, it's not. It's the same. So judgment, view, claim, conclusion, opinion, they're all kind of interchangeable. They're all questionable. They're all interchangeable. Okay. This now says, does inference question mean what can be inferred as per the author's standpoint? If there's nothing else which is given specifically in the question stem, then yes, by default, it means that. If the test makers, if the GMAC wants you to really say what could be inferred from this person's point of view, they'll explicitly state that. Okay. In that case, of course, you'll have to look at that person's point of view. Does one also need to practice vocabulary? Not really, Mudit. And that's where when you look at the GMAT course, you're going to find why do we say that. Okay. So now we're going to do one full length passage. We're going to really cement these concepts in this full length passage. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to read this passage. All right. And then after those 4 minutes, we're going to really go there. So I'm going to address that one question which is still there. But I said it says, can we say that the inference is same as assumption? Actually, inference is in some ways yes, but it is completely different from assumption. And inference is what's definitely true given the information that's provided to you. An assumption is something that has to be true to make the claim that is you made based on the information provided to you. I understand where you're coming from because both of them have a must be true component to it, but they're very distinct in that regards. In fact, I think I wrote an article on inference versus assumption sometime over there. So here is the article on inference versus assumption that you guys can really do this. It should come in response to Shrey's question in the Q&A pod. Okay. So how do you improve reading? Read slowly and practice active reading. That's how you improve reading. Don't read a ton because that's not going to help you with that. You have to read you have to read enough, but read actively. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to read this passage. I'm going to mute myself and then we're going to solve questions. Again, you'll have access to the content of the passage, so don't worry about it. All right, guys, last 1 minute. You still have 1 minute. Okay, most of you have done reading the passage. I'm going to start with the questions now. Okay, let me move the passage over here. I want to actually do this. This is how you guys are done. I have the passage over here. Reduce the size of this, and you should be able to scroll up and down to read the passage over here. And I think this is a nice fit. Just give me 1 second. And with this, I'm going to start getting the poll questions over here. Here are the poll questions. There's the first question based on this passage. Okay, take 2 minutes to answer this question. All right, another 20 seconds. Get those responses in. Five, four, three, two, and 1. That's wonderful. Let me move question 1 away. I'm going to end the poll. Hide this. You have question 2. The poll's over here. And I'm going to show the question here. Here's question 2 for you. Right, last 10 seconds. I think pretty much everyone's done based on the data that I see over here, but last 10 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I'm gonna hide this. Here's my third question, or the poll for third question. The question is still to be broadcasted. Okay, guys, another 15 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Hide this. Here's your question 4 for the passage. And here is question number. Okay, last 20 seconds. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and let's get to the last question. Here is the poll for the last question. One second. And here is the poll. All right, last 15 seconds, guys. Get those responses in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's get those answers in. I'm going to end this poll. So one of the things that I observed was that, hey, early on, uh, there were a lot more people who responded, but towards as you were solving questions, fatigue did set in many ways, and so that was something that was there, and you guys, some of you, not all, but 70 to 75% of you still continue to respond, but a few of you really said, man, uh, I'm just too tired to really think about this question. And I want to make sure that that's, I want to tell you that happens, but that's when you need to continue to go. Okay, so so let's kind of go on from this. So let's kind of look at how we go about doing this over here. And yes, we'll be sending the recording for this one. I know a few of you need to leave. So Fraser and Mosteller, FNM, assert that medical research could be improved by moving towards simpler clinical trials uh, of medical treatments. Okay, so there's something that's an assertion that's made by FNM. Okay, when you see the word assert, you say something that they've said, and then the author says currently. Okay, and what are they asserting? It says medical research can could be improved. How can it be improved? By moving towards a larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. Okay. Now let's look at the next piece over here. Currently, which means at present, researchers collect far more data than is strictly required for their trials, substantially more than hospitals collect. So this is kind of explaining how much more data do researchers collect, thereby escalating cost of data storage and analysis. Okay, this is what the author is really saying over here, because you don't see anything before this. So the author is saying is that researchers collect a lot of data, and that data leads to that amount of data that they collect, that leads to escalating the costs of three things. One is data collection, data storage, and data analysis. Then let's move forward. So, so this basically negatives of collecting more data. These three things. Then the author says, although. What is although over here? Let's kind of move this over here. I'm going to get my short answer pod. So what does the word although actually indicate? What does the word although indicate? Although is a contrast word. Although is used to change the chain of thought, and that's something which is very, very important. That when the moment you see the word although, pause and you really say, hey, the author is going to go in a slightly different direction right now. It could also be a completely opposite direction. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study. So pause over here. It seems like a natural pause point here. Although limiting information connection could lead to some downside. What is it? Risk of losing certain facts. F&M content. Again, this is not the author's view. F&M content that such risk can't completely be eliminated from research and would still be small in some studies. Okay. Now, so you see this, you kind of listed that down and say, hey, the risk can't be completely removed. It's a very small risk, and that's a contention of F&M. Then, what does the word only mean? Whenever you see the word only, why should you worry about it? e-GMAT CR students. Okay, it's a restriction. Yes, that's really good. Only means a restriction. And when you say only in research or entirely new treatments are new and unexpected variables likely to arise. So it says, hey, there's this one exception which is there that, hey, with the exception of research on new treatments, and we are continuing the thought from before, that the risk would still be small in more studies, with the exception that in new treatments, near unexpected variables are likely to arise. Now, why should you worry about the word only whenever you see this, and why should you pause? Because when you see the word only, always tell yourself that there are inferences that can be drawn based on it. Okay, why? Because when you see, and this is something that we teach you in analyzing statements and critical reasoning in the CR inference module, but let's kind of look at this over here. When I say, and this is where sentence structures become really important, the importance of words become. When you look at this statement over here, only buildings taller than three stories were demolished in the earthquake. What can you infer? When you see this simple statement, what can you infer out of this? You can infer that okay, if that's one thing that you can definitely infer. Okay, the other thing which is there is that you can infer is if and let's make it slightly better, not demolished, not in by the earthquake. Okay, You can also really infer all buildings weren't demolished, probably. Why? Because there could be, yeah. Then the other piece which is there is, tell me about this statement. Okay, this statement. Can you infer this statement? Can you infer the statement number 3? Can you infer it? Yes, no? The answer is no, you cannot infer this. Why? Because what the statement is saying is that buildings that were demolished were taller than 3 stories. It doesn't really mean that 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 if a building is taller than 3 stories, it probably was demolished. So there's a greater than 50% likelihood that it was demolished. It doesn't mean that. It could be that, hey, there are 1,000 buildings that are taller than 3 stories, and probably 10 out of them were demolished. But everything that was demolished was taller than 3 stories. Okay. So that's something which is saying, but so you can't really say if a building is taller than 3 stories, it probably was demolished by the earthquake. You can't say that. Okay. The word probably does not apply. You can't infer that from the statement over here. And that's where, the word only is always something that there are certain keywords that you should always kind of be on a lookout for. Don't go into assumptions. If you want to go into assumptions, attend the session next week. Yeah, that's a way. I don't want to open. Why can't probably be used? Because when you say probability, you're assuming a high likelihood. Okay. That's why. And there's nothing in the original statement, Vanessa, that indicates a high likelihood. Okay. So does that help, Vanessa? Perfect. Good. So let's move forward. Then let's go into the next part. It says F&M propose not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers uh, uh, enroll more patients in clinical trials. So they propose something else, all right? So let's kind of move forward. For F&M, they they say they not only do they collect less data, but also increase the size of the trial, all right? Thereby, what is the importance of the word thereby? What is the importance of the word thereby? As a result, hence, that's an outcome. Thereby is an outcome, thereby obtaining a more representative sample of the total population with the disease under study. So, okay, so you get a more representative sample overall. And that's again another keyword you need to really worry about. And then the author talks about what happens currently. Often researchers restrict participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. What does this mean? What does this statement mean? It means currently the study only includes those patients who have that the only disease that they have is the one that's been studied in the trial. Okay. And then the author goes on to say a treatment, which is kind of what the author says, ideal conditions. Treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions, that's where the author says ideal, can then be evaluated under normal conditions. Okay. So there's a second stage of evaluation. That's what happens in the current process. Okay. So far with me, you guys are clear? All right. Then the author says, broadening the range of participants, of trial participants, FNM suggests, again, remember where FNM are suggesting something, broadening the range of trial participants, FNM suggests, would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions. So again, I would stop over here because my brain is starting to get overloaded. So as I'm reading this, what's really important for you is to understand where I'm stopping, because that's kind of where my brain starts to get overloaded. If your brain starts to get overloaded earlier, then you should stop earlier, and that's a key. Okay, so what in addition to an outcome of broad increasing the size of the trial would be to evaluate that efficacy for a diverse set of patients, okay, and then who are um, under various conditions, and to evaluate such as its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. Okay, so that's something that the author again says this is what's going to happen. He kind of is or FNM are making a claim over here. And then he says, for example, he's kind of now substantiating that claim. When you say the word for example after a claim, you see it's a substantiation most likely. The value of a treatment of a progressive disease may vary according to the patient's stage of disease. Patient's ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. Okay. So, what do you infer from this? What FNM are saying is that the current practice, which is where you're doing those multiple trials, where you first will look at patients who are ideal patients, and then you really broaden the set. That may not be needed once you broaden the set up front, since the broadened set is all considered from the get-go overall. Okay. Do we recommend writing notes? Yes, I do write notes even today. Okay, so I do recommend writing notes. Now, when you look at the passage analysis over here and you say, okay, how are the passages outlined over here? So what does the author really say? There's a proposal to increase or broaden or changes to medical research. One is the author saying, hey, let's collect simpler trials, let's collect less data. Why? Because for most cases, there would not be much additional risk, and it'll reduce the cost. And he explains how currently the trials are done. And then the second thing that he says is, in addition to collecting less data, let's kind of broaden the people who we put in the trial. Why? Because you'll get a much more representative population going through the trial, and it'll give you efficacy information about, but in general, the larger population. He again explains the current scenario in that as well. Okay, so that's what the author does in this, and there's this explained from the point of FNM overall. So let's kind of look at the questions over here. And let's go to question number 1. You guys actually did pretty well in question number 1. 60% of you chose choice D, which is the correct choice over here. It's the main point of question. So when you look at the main point, the author gives an example of what FNM are proposing to changes to medical research. They talk about the benefits of a simpler trial, and then changes actually go to another set over here, where in the second paragraph, the benefits FNM first in the first paragraph, FNM propose that the trials be simpler, we collect less data. In the second paragraph, FNM propose that we do larger trials, which means we enroll more people, and then we get much more representative results. So essentially, when you think about it, that two proposed changes are discussed or are explained over here. Okay, and when you look at the answer choices, what's going on over here is choice D, as we already said, is the correct answer. Now, why are the other answer choices incorrect? Let's start with choice C. Why? Because it was the second most popular choice. Choice C starts with evaluating. Now, evaluation means pros and cons of current practices. Okay. Now, do we talk about the pros and cons of current practices in this passage? Do we talk about pros and cons? The answer is no. And because of this, the word evaluation is incorrect. All right. The author doesn't say this. That's why the current practices are good. That's why the current practices are bad. Okay. So which is why choice C is incorrect. Choice A says identifying two practices in medical research that may affect the accuracy of the trial. The two practices that I explained, uh, 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 but essentially the accuracy of trials is not discussed with that regard, or to really say how much more accurate would be. That's not the primary purpose over there. Okay, let's look at choice B. Choice B says describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive up costs. Yes, that's mentioned in paragraph within the first paragraph, but the second paragraph it doesn't address that. This is what we call as an incomplete answer choice. Okay, choice C we've already discussed over here. Okay, choice D is the correct one. Choice D says describing proposed changes. So we look at the two proposed changes. The author is describing those changes, and these changes are to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. So the author says this is what the current practice is. This is what the changes is supposed to be. Okay, so he describes the proposed changes over here, and then choice E says, Krishnan, if you think D is wrong, you can go to the GMAT and really tell them that D is wrong. So I think this is an official question. So, and again, if you have an opinion, post it, or if you have a question, put it in the Q&A pod. Okay. So, choice E says explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted trials. Okay, we say there's a certain explanation. I'm not so off with that right now. And how such trials are likely to change. Uh, do we know whether these trials are likely to change? We don't know that. This is a proposal that is discussed over there. Okay, so choice E is goes beyond the scope over there, and which is why choice E for me is wrong. Again, the thing with this was 60% of the class got it right. Um, but the other answer choices, I mean, there were portions of it that were correct, but there were portions of it that were absolutely wrong. Niharika says, is there a connection between paragraph 1 and 2? Absolutely, Niharika. Both paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 are proposals that are by FNM, I think. That's what. I'm sorry, it's just um, the FNM sounds very much like the name of a company that I previously worked for about 12 years back, PNF. So I am very tempted to say PNF rather than FNM. So, but yeah, good question, Niharika. Okay. So let's look at question number 2 over here. The question number 2 says, which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study of category of patients referred to in the line, often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Uh, so the author is essentially asking, whenever you read a question, you ask yourself, what is the author asking? What the author is asking over here is that what can be inferred about these studies in which only patients who have, just the studied ailments, who have those patients are selected that have the ailments that are being studied. Okay, and let's kind of go and look at uh, what such is the case. Okay, we will go to the relevant part of the passage over there. Okay, often researchers restrict study uh, participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. So what this passage is talking about is the study in which patients are selectively taken. Okay, and what the author, according to the author, that study is very limiting, and it only covers what ideal conditions and not normal conditions. How do we know that? Because the author really says, hey, FNM suggests that if we enroll a broader set of participants, it would tell us the treatment's efficacy for a diverse set of patients. Okay. So what do we know? The results of such study would be limiting, and it only covers it's more idealistic, not as realistic. And again, when you look at this, choice A jumps out to me right front and center. Let me see how we polled for this one. Let's get question 2, passage question 2. And this is where a number of you stumbled. 35% of you chose choice A. Choices C and D were very popular. C, D, and E are all very popular. So choice C says it would be the best way to sample the total population of potential patients. No, we don't talk about potential patients over here. We talk about uh, uh, we rarely talk about essentially the impact on the population in general. Okay, then let's look at choice D over here. It will allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. And I understand why this is really this could sound really tempting. Choice D. Why? Because paragraph 1 discusses about limiting information collection. Paragraph 2 discusses about the risk part over here. But then you can't combine both of these, and because the passage doesn't discuss that. Okay, so this is a tempting choice, but that combination that would is not discussed over here. Okay, the data collection in the context of this is not discussed, if you think about it. Choice E again was very popular. Choice E compares progressive disease versus a non-progressive disease. Does the author make that comparison or that assertion anywhere in the passage? No, the author doesn't compare a progressive versus a non-progressive. He mentions progressive, yes, but he says for a progressive disease, when you enroll a larger set of population, the results may be more representative. But that comparison with non-progressive is truly going too far. Okay, so that's something which again is not there. Now, 35% of you, why did I go beyond this? Got this wrong. Okay, why was that? Why? Because you're thinking beyond the scope of the passage. There's information given over there. You're combining information that was not to be combined. That was choice D. Choice E was going beyond the scope of the passage overall. Choice A was definitely 100% correct. It's something that the line actually says. There's no way you could have really said, hey, this is not correct. Had you even gone through an elimination path, you probably would have narrowed it down to choice A. If you did not understand this, question 3 talks about the same piece. Let's look at question 3 over here. Question 3 says it can be inferred from the passage that the study limited to patients like those mentioned in, again, the same lines. Often researchers blah 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 would have which of the following advantages over the kind of study proposed by F&M. Okay, so this is actually going in an opposite direction. What we're really saying is the idealistic study would have what kind of advantages over the study that are proposed by over the study that F&M proposed. Okay, so in other words, what is the advantage of the current way of conducting studies, which is what is the current way? Restricting participation to patients who have no other ailments, over the proposed way. What is the proposed way? Which is to increase the size of the trial. While solving question 3, did everyone get this? That this is what the author is asking? How many of you did not get this? And again, be very honest here. No one's judging you. It's when you say I did not get this, it's you who are really saying this is where I need to focus. I need to first figure out what the question is asking before I even start spending my time elsewhere. Here's how you guys polled. And where 55% of you, I think, got the question right. Again, I don't remember the answer choices, but we'll get to it over there. Okay, yeah, 55% of you got it right, now that I see it. But then choices D and E were again very popular, as was choice A. And again, you can see when you see what we call as a split theory, you see that there is confusion over here. Okay. Now, where can we get this piece over here? You look at this and you talk about the shaded portion over here, ideal conditions over here. So what's told about ideal conditions is say when we do a treatment under ideal conditions, that treatment has limited applicability. Whereas what are we doing with the proposed conditions? With the proposed conditions, we are broadening the set and we are analyzing a few other things. And the examples that are given to us are you know, this patient stage of disease. The second is the patient's age over here. So there's these two other things, at least two other things that we could be analyzing in that broader study. Okay. So proposed way, include more participants, include and with those with including more participants, you're also including more variables. So so what's the advantage of that over over what's the advantage of the current way of doing this over the proposed way? I think when you look at this, choice C is something which you can infer that it would limit the number of variables researchers would need to study. Why? Because in the current way, you're only studying a limited set of people. Okay. Um, Choices D and E seem tempting. It would help researchers to identify subgroups of patients with secondary conditions. They're tempting, but is that the advantage of the current way? No. That is indicated as an advantage of the proposed way. Again, this is an advantage of the proposed way as well, not the current way. So again, you're answering a different question if you're answering choice D and E, if you're selecting choice D and E. Why? Because these are actually this is the downside of the current way, that these insights don't come. Um, Choice A, findings more accurate. I don't think anywhere we say that the findings of the current way would be more accurate. We don't say that. When you look at the passage, and let's kind of look at this over here. In fact, the proposed way will have better findings. Why? Because in the current way, you do this finding on a limited set, then you expand the set. It's a two-step process. In the proposed way, you compress both the steps in the single go. So the current way would actually have less accurate findings overall. Shiv, Shivangi, did you get that? Again, where you guys got confused was the statement of the passage. You've got to figure out what what the passage is asking about, and that's really important to know. All right, let's look at the last choice over here, choice E. Actually, we're still on question 4. What's happening to me? Let me get your polls for question 4. Okay, you guys actually started doing better in question 4. The question 4 uh, was more of a purpose question. 62% of you got it right. Question 4 says the author mentions patients' ages uh, in in the line patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy in order to. Why does the patient? It's a variable that may impact, you know, the outcomes. Okay. It could affect the efficacy of the treatment in real life situation. And then he also really says how FNM's proposal could help address, when you enroll a broader set of patients, it could help address the same. So again, this is you do this pre-thinking and you really say, hey, why does the author mention this? And when you look at choice D, which 62% of you've got figured out, illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of patients in clinical trials. That's something which is there. When you look at choice A, in fact, the only other choice that would want to focus on uh, is choice C, which 17% of you say indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. No, that's not the reason why the author presents it. You know, the reason why he presents is to really talk about the value of enrolling a wide variety. Okay. The goal of the author when he presents his data point is not to really talk about progressive diseases, but to explain the implication of wider variety. Substantiate an argument about the problems inherent in enrolling a large number of patients? No, he's not substantiating, he's not supporting. Substantiate means support. There's nowhere in the passage, Ishika, that the author mentions that there's a problem in enrolling a large number of patients. No. Okay. Does that help? Okay, that's great. And again, that's where there's a preconceived notion, and then if you read properly, you really see that you get to the right answers, correct answers a lot more with a lot more confidence. Okay, let's move forward. So let's look at according to the passage, this is a detailed question, which of the following describes a result in which of a way in which the researchers generally conduct a clinical trial? So what happens when researchers generally conduct a clinical trial? There are two things that happen. They conduct a lot of, they collect a lot of data, or the second thing is the first stage of results, they have limited applicability. That's one of those two. Let's kind of look at this over here. Okay, so they collect a lot more data. Consequently, the costs are more. The second is there's ideal conditions, so the applicability is limited. Those are the two things you can really say even without looking at the passage. So with that pre-thinking, let's kind of go towards the answer choices. And before I do that, let me get how figure out how you guys polled over here. Q5 broadcast results, choices A and C are very popular. So the correct answer, if I recall correctly, and if I were to justify it, would be choice A. Why? Because they expand resources paragraph first. The first paragraph really says that, hey, you're storing information which is not as relevant, and then that increases the cost. Let's look at choice C. Why choice B and C? Actually, B, C, and D, all three of them are very popular. They sometimes compromise the accuracy of findings and by collecting and analyzing more information. The author says they collect and analyze more information, but the author nowhere in the passage says that they compromise, as in the researchers compromise the accuracy of findings. Okay, the accuracy of findings, that part is not actively discussed in the passage. Folks who chose choice B, are you guys clear as to why this part over here is not correct? Okay. Choice C, very popular. The avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings, even though doing so raises their research costs. They don't avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings. Okay. Because the author really says, even when you collect this comprehensive set, that a similar risk might still exist. Okay, the author says the other way of doing studies doesn't increase the risks, and the similar risk might still exist. So they don't avoid. Avoid means completely eliminate. Okay. Overlooking facts that could emerge as relevant to their studies, they're not overlooking anything. That part is not discussed. Okay. Um, Choice E again, not very many people actually looked at it. Again, this part was something that you simply, if you did the pre-thinking without looking at the answer choices, you would have really chosen choice A. had you not done the pre-thinking without looking at the answer choices, you would have really been frustrated. You would have really said, hey man, which one's correct? And then uh, making that decision would become really difficult. So one thing that I want to make sure you do as you do this is you do the pre-thinking right. As you read the passage, you know, make sure you read it correctly, understand it thoroughly, and as you see the transition from one sentence to the other, notice the transition words and consequently the linkages. And if you're drawing inferences while you're reading it, you'll find that answering questions becomes very, very simple. Okay, so where do you go from here? First of all, motivate yourself. You've got to get to the score if you want to get to top B schools, if you want to have that delta of $500,000. Okay. Now, how do you get to that 90th percentile ability? The two things that you need to do is you need to master the method of reading slowly, and you need to look at data to figure out where you need to focus your energy. Because once you look at data, you can figure out where you need to focus your energy, and that powers your success. Now, some of you may be thinking, how many of you, just a yes no poll, are thinking, man, this guy is proposing to read slowly in a time test. That can't be right. How many of you are thinking that? Okay, a lot of you are thinking that. What do you guys know about the success of e-GMAT? What do you guys know about the success of e-GMAT? Nothing, okay. So if you go to GMAT Club and go to their forum and share GMAT experience, if you click on the tag e-GMAT, what you're going to find is 10 plus pages of success stories. If you click on any other tag, any other tag, even books, you're going to find that there are actually fewer than 4 to 5 pages of success stories. Okay. If you look at the reviews, you're going to find that no other prep company has over 1,000 reviews. We have close to 2,000 reviews on GMAT Club. And our methods are the reason why the reviews are there. Okay. Our methods are different. Our methods are driven by data. A few of the other things that you'd notice is that we are the only company that has about 40 people who are working full time, and we just do the GMAT. We don't do anything else. Okay, why is it that we just do the GMAT? Because we do a ton of research. Yes, some people will say they are paid. Ask those people to prove a single review is paid. I think that's where, when you go to our LinkedIn, when you go to our, if you go to our YouTube channel, you're going to see real people. You can really verify each one of those people out. Why do you think when you have a delta where one company has 2,000 reviews, another company has 200 reviews, some people would say those reviews are paid? Or who would be those people who would be saying those reviews are paid? And many of you are you want to go and do an MBA. What does a business leader do? A business leader makes decisions. How do you make decision? You make decision based on data. Go do some research. Go reach out to some of our former students. You go and reach out to students at any business school, any top business school, ranked 1 to 50. You're going to get a ton of references. So again, yes, you're going to see some of those reviews who say that some of those people who say reviews are fake. Figure out who those people are who are saying those reviews are fake. And again, it increases your work, but it's something which is really valuable for you. But let's come back and really see, why should you read slowly in a time test? And as someone really said, hey, it reduces your time to answer question. Here's the classical way that people really recommend that you approach GMAT RC. They say you read a passage, spend 2 minutes on reading a passage, then you spend about 2 minutes to answer each question, or a minute and a half when I say a minute 50, this is a minute and a half to answer each question. So you get about 8 minutes to answer a 4-question passage. It seems very, very logical when it comes to GMAT RC. 2 minutes per question, 4 questions per passage makes sense. Okay. But if you think about the amount of time spent for the initial read, that's about 25% of your time. Now, if you read the passage slowly, this is the amount of time that you'd spend. For an average difficulty, medium-sized passage, you're going to spend 3 minutes reading slowly, and you're going to read the passage once. And when you do that, if you get used to answering questions, and then I say getting used to, after the first 20 passages that you do while doing this, what you're going to find is answering question takes about a minute per question. So in the end, you're going to end up taking about 7 minutes per passage. Now, if that passage is difficult, like some of the passages that we did in this particular session, what you're going to do is you're going to spend 4 minutes. You're going to read even more slowly. Okay. The beauty of difficult passages is if you understand the passage, answering question becomes actually very, very easy. And in that case, you're going to find that you spend even less time answering questions. And again, even if you spend a minute answering questions over here, you still have 8 minutes over there. But you're spending time on truly comprehending the reading comprehension. And again, I know that's wordy, but that's what reading comprehension is about. It's not about the tricks of, hey, I'm going to read the first and last line and only come back to the relevant piece. As you saw in the examples over here, a reading comprehension is a connected piece of text. In fact, even though it's between 350 to 500 words, there is very little fluff in there. Every piece is connected. So you can't just skim through it and assume to answer questions. Okay. And you'd see this will happen, that if you comprehend the passage, you don't need to spend more than a minute to answer each question. And there are some examples over here. And by the way, those of you who are really looking for evidences, you can look for these people on LinkedIn and you can see what they're doing. Okay. Anastasia, she's, I think, from Russia or Eastern Europe. She said you should read all the text, not only the first and the last sentence of paragraph or any other way. As long as you understand the whole paragraph, it takes only 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. And she says, the more you read, the greater is your skill. Now, here is the interesting piece over this. When you say the more you read, the greater is your skill, it's the more you read critically, which means, understanding sentence structure, doing predictive reading, looking at keywords, then your skill increases. So she says, I read all the official passages, which I found on the internet, and brought a subscription of The Economist, which is the magazine. Each article, that is how she went about reading this. Okay. It's about doing this critically. If you do an article a day like this, you're going to find in 5 days, trust me, in 5 days with the e-GMAT course, you're going to see there's a huge difference in your RC ability. By the way, this girl is now finishing her master's from Columbia. So for those of you who want to just look at her LinkedIn, if you just Google that, you're going to figure that out. Nishant, again, someone who's doing his MBA from Columbia, he says when you have to realize that you have enough time to cover all questions. What you have to realize is that you have enough time to cover all questions. On GMAT Verbal, you answer 30 questions correctly, you're going to get to a V43, which is a 97th percentile. Okay. Do not stress about timing at all. Now, what is SC hat? SC hat is how we talk about sentence structure in SC, which is the SC hat. He says take 3+ minutes to read, understand, and comprehend a short passage, and 4+ minutes for a long passage is kind of what we recommend. And he says you invest initially, but while answering questions, you'd be able to do that in 45 to 60 seconds. RC is not a test of vocab. Okay. And this is, you can look at his debrief, which is on GMAT Club, and you can really see his time per question. You can download his ESR over there. There's another guy, Dr. Rohit Malan. He's an IAS officer, or IDES officer, so defense officer, which is the same cadre as IAS. Um, he took the GMAT twice. First time he didn't do as well, and he scored a V27. He says, in case of reading comprehension, I was forced to read the passage multiple times because he didn't understand the passage the first time around. So this guy was really, he's a voracious reader, has cleared the Indian Administrative Services exam, and so he's someone who's used to reading, but even he faltered on the GMAT. But then he started applying reading strategies. He got to a 94th percentile, and he says once he started applying those strategies, the need to read in both CR and RC decreased significantly. Again, when you say these YouTube links, you can just click on and watch them. So how do you go about preparing for that 90th percentile? Um, you read each sentence strategically. And how do you do that? You go through the master comprehension course. You see the building blocks of the sentence, where we look at how the sentence build, how do you build a long sentence. So we start with a 2-word sentence, and I think we extend it to I think a 60 or 80-word sentence. And then we tell you how do you deconstruct long sentences overall, and then we evaluate you on that. Okay. We also teach you how to and where to pause. And then we continue this part in the reading strategies in RC course, and where we throw these passages at you. And then we go through the conceptual pieces and make you evaluate you on that as well. Now, a question for you. How many of you spend more than 30 minutes on the main point concept? How many of you spend that? Those of you who did. That is good. That is investment, time well invested. Why? Because the more time you spend on doing that foundation, the more you're going to find things become easier for you towards the end. If you've not gone through the main point concept, spend more time. The thing that you're going to realize, and we've seen this statistically, is people who spend more time early on, people who invest that time building that foundation, find it so much more easier to 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 uh, to go through and improve towards the end. Similarly, in inference, we actually teach you what is inference in the context of RC. You have 3 concepts, you have 2 practice files over there. And again, the whole point over there is even before you start solving full passages, you have the right foundation to approach them. And then you apply this. You have application modules, you essentially have practice modules, and then you have the Scholaranium platform, which is, I mean, the kind of detail that you're going to see is will tell you how should you have read each and every line. Okay. And then you can track your improvement in Scholaranium. So when it comes to acing GMAT RC, it's not about rocket science. It's about a process that you have to follow. If you diligently follow the process, what you're going to find is that that achieving that 90th percentile is a natural outcome out of it. So follow the process, learn the methods, figure out where you're faltering, use that data. And here's one article that I'm going to leave you with. It's the research that we did based on based on about 600 odd students, 300 of whom were successful, 300 of them were not. All 600 were our students, which is what allowed us to get this data. And what we found in that research was people who ace the GMAT actually solve fewer practice questions than people who don't. Okay. It's an article that says what causes success on the GMAT. So it's actually very widely distributed when we read this. How long does it take to prepare for GMAT Verbal? Every person is different. We have actually an AI-driven planner tool that allows you to do that. So if you write to me at rajadari.gmat, we can definitely help you figure out how long it will take for you to solve um, to prepare for the GMAT. Okay. So, so with that, let me actually share the PDF with you so that you guys can download the same. Uh, when writing notes, are you writing the details of the passage or the main idea of the passage? When I'm writing notes, I'm actually writing down what I've comprehended. I'm writing a couple of words, no more than that. When we started, when I started learning reading comprehension myself, I was writing a lot more. I wrote down a ton more. But then now, because my mind's already trained, I need to worry about writing just a few words. So I write down a few words when my brain starts to get overwhelmed. That way, I kind of shake my brain off and then go on to the next part. Writing those words makes sure that I can always recall what a certain part of the passage said. Um, Once I have those words written down, arriving at the main idea becomes very easy. Is it possible to remember each of the lines while solving the question? Now, the thing that you have to remember is that the GMAT RC is not a test of facts, it's a test of transitions, the test of opinions in the passage. So you won't be recalling facts, but yes, you'd recall, yeah, so you won't need to reproduce facts, but the opinions, you'd have to really demonstrate an understanding of those opinions. And yes, it's very possible to remember those. And that's kind of where each RC is like a mini story, and we as humans tend to remember stories. How many months of study do students spend to attain a certain score? Is it 3 months? Again, it depends on what your starting score is. An average rule of thumb is for you need about 8 hours of study time for every 10 point of improvement. So if you're starting at a 650, you want to go to a 740. I would say so. Beyond 730 or 720, the time required also increases slightly. So that's why we have an AI driven tool that helps you do this. But typically 650 to 740 improvement is about 80 hours or so. If you look at 600 to 730, that's about 100 to 110 hours. If you look at and this is diligent effort. Okay. If you look at 550 to so on and so forth, you're looking at more time. So we calculate time in terms of number of hours. We don't calculate time in terms of number of months. Why? Because every individual is different. Um, as you look at the success stories over here, you're going to find there are people who've improved in a month. There are people who've taken 3 months. There are people who've taken 6 months to improve. And then the difference is the starting scores, the number of hours they could put in, and number three is also how diligently did they do this. I mean, number of breaks that they have, and so on and so forth. Kriti says, could you explain how the quant classes flow? Kriti, we are a self-paced learning platform which is driven by technology. So when you take courses within our platform, we evaluate, we collect data from you every minute of your preparation. We give you feedback using technology every 25 minutes of your preparation. So it's a self-paced learning platform, along with some working with some of our mentors over there. We have offices actually in Delhi, Bangalore, in Phoenix, as well as in Florida, but we don't have a physical classroom. It's just, the cost of us providing a physical classroom would go upwards of 80,000 rupees in Indian currency. Just the quality of instructors that we have. And that's why when you go to GMAT Club and when you look at top rated instructors, you're going to find that 4 out of 5 instructors are essentially they work for e-GMAT. So when you look at this over here, you look at instructor reviews. What's the difficulty of the passage that we answered towards the end? It was a 700 level question. Passage, yes. As a working professional, how do you start if I'm just preparing for the GMAT? So as a working professional, how do you start? Start with taking a Sigma X mock test. So it'll give you your various ability scores. It'll help you create a study plan. So that's something which is there. Then create a study plan. We Our study planner tools actually tell you this exact sequence in which you need to do things. It'll tell you uh, how much time you need to study SE, what percentile ability scores you need to strive for, and so on and so forth. Kriti says, if you have a student has a doubt, how is it solved? And you also have a package for quant. Yes, we have a package for quant and verbal, Kriti. If you have a doubt, we have an internal forum with every entity within e-GMAT. So you post your doubt over there, and you get a response from the expert in less than 24 hours or less than one working day. Uh, I can tell you, people love our support. Our students last year solved, sorry, our experts last year, I think they solved upwards of 30,000 doubts. And you can see all the doubts on the platform. So I'm going to share this video, which talks a bit about the stats that we have last year. So you can really see all the support that is there. Devashi says, I took the CAT, I got good scores in quant, but not as great scores on the English side of it. Can I improve? Devashi, GMAT and CAT are very different exams. We see a lot of people who are in your shoes, and they do really well on the GMAT. GMAT's a very logic-based test. Stephen says, okay. Stephen says, I'm an undergraduate. The GMAT score is valid for just 5 years. What do I do? It's something, Stephen, that you need to really evaluate. Typically, what I would do is, if you are still in your undergrad, I would people take the test during the third and final year. They work for 3 years and they apply to business schools. That's kind of plenty of time. Okay. Kriti, if you want to know more, you can write to me, and then one of our counselors will get together with you. Okay, there was another question. Madhukar says, I finished the RC course a couple of months ago, but I haven't done any prep lately. Madhukar, you've got to reevaluate yourself. You've got to really figure out what your ability score is. Send that to our GMAT strategy team, and then get an improvement plan. You'd probably be doing either a revision A or a revision B based on your ability stats. So guys, I think that's pretty much all the questions. If I'm going to clear the right hand poll over here, if I can get some feedback on the webinar, it'll be really great for me. Can I get some feedback on the webinar over here in the right hand poll? In the right hand poll over here. So again, my mail ID is rajat@e-gmat.com. So that's something you can email me on, and yeah. Madhukar, that's the same way you'd really do that. You'd just write to Rajatari GMAT, take the Sigma X first, and then kind of, frankly, if I were you, after the Sigma X mock, use the study planner tool, and from there on, once you've used the tool, you should have specific questions, and then be able to give you very specific answers. The diagnostic test, I shared the link for Sigma X. Okay, here is the link for Sigma X. You guys can take that. It's a 2-hour long test, so make sure you reserve that time. Neeraj says, I'm 9 years of work experience. Can I go for GMAT, and how much time do I need to spend? So Neeraj, again, take a Sigma X mock, then set up some time with one of our counselors, and then we'll help you actually uh, get to it. What is the fees? The fees is listed on our website. So if you go to e-GMAT.com, you have various courses. You can really see the fees. And you see the prices in US dollars, because when we charge in US dollars, you guys, if you are in other parts of the world other than US, you don't pay any sales tax. So people from India, for example, don't pay the GST, so you save about 18%. We have an option of paying in Indian rupees, but then you end up paying the GST. Can you score well if you're exhausted from work and you're studying after that? I think that completely depends on you, but I've seen people do really, really well. In fact, if you watch some of the interviews on our YouTube channel, you'd really see how people go about planning their preparation. I mean, these are unedited interviews uh, that we have. So this is one of the latest ones that this is from by working professional. What are the next sessions? That's a good question. We have a quant workshop. And then we have a critical reasoning session over here. So here are the next sessions. Okay, you can click on these, and okay. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It was a pleasure hosting this webinar, and I will let you guys enjoy the free trial and then get back to me. And if you have any other questions, you can write to me at rajat@gmaat.com.